of other stuff. So we want to see now, what are we taught in society as the common knowledge of GST? Who gets a GST number? Anybody that has in business, unless they make what? Less than $30,000 a year. So is that a lie? No, that's the truth. But you know what it is? It's not the whole truth. So you don't have to lie to people, you just give them enough for them to hang themselves. If we go into the act itself and find out, do we even have to register? What is the requirements to even register to collect GST? Section 241, it goes, every person who makes a taxable supply in Canada in the course of a commercial activity engaged in by the person in Canada is required to be registered for the purpose of this part, except where, and that's that small supplier stuff. Now, we're all intelligent. We just read that, and we actually know what that meant, don't we? And this is where it's like, when we're aware of how the game is played, we will actually slow it down. We'll go in and say, well, what if they played word magic here? So we go in and we look at a taxable supply. It means a supply that's made in the course of a commercial activity. If we stop here and assume we know what a commercial activity is, well, I make money, so that must be a commercial activity, then we're still trapped. Sometimes, see, that's why I was saying the permissible presumption that no act of law will hurt you, that will give you the motivation to keep going deeper because you know they can't hurt you. That just means it's hidden deeper. So if we go deeper and go to what's a commercial activity then? Commercial activity of a person means a business carried on by the person other than a business carried on without reasonable expectation of profit by an individual, which is what? A natural person, a personal trust or partnership, all the members of which are natural persons. So if they could, why would they have to put the escape? Because you cannot force this upon a natural person. So let's backspin this and see if it fits. If you were carrying on a business without reasonable expectation for profit in your capacity as a natural person, would you have commercial activity? No, you'd fall outside the definition. So if you're not carrying on a commercial activity, then you're not making a taxable supply, and if you're not making a taxable supply, then you're not even required to register. So the only really question that remains to be answered in here is, do you have a reasonable expectation of profit? Now, what are we taught in society? How many people would like to have a very profitable year next year? Profit's good, right? What is profit? We need to look at that first. I hope you're realizing is like, as we go, it's like we need to quit assuming we understand what they're saying. Okay? Do you have a reasonable expectation of profit? Well, profit, the definition is very simple. It goes, the advance in the price of goods sold beyond the cost purchased. The gain made by the sale of produce or manufactures after deducting the value of labor, materials, rents, and all expenses together with the interest of the capital employed. So after, basically, it's what's left at the end of the day after everything's paid for. So you got to ask yourself, do you have a reasonable expectation of profit? Say you made something, you sold it for $10,000. Say you spent a couple grand on material. You hired a natural person to work with you so you didn't have all that bureaucratic employee red tape. Paid him $1,000. Okay? You're part of this equation. How much are you worth? How much are you going to pay yourself? So you got profit? Did you even have a reasonable expectation of profit? So when you look at that, is who can determine whether you are making profit or not? The courts have already ruled. CCR has no authority to deem anybody has a reasonable expectation of profit or not. That is left up to each individual. See, value is something that is rarely, I don't think I've ever seen it argued. Let's look at it like this. How much is this pen worth? 10,000 bucks? Do I hear 11? 12? Okay, 12 over there. You see, if he paid 12 grand for this, it's a private agreement. Value is an elusive thing. So when you really look at knowing who you are and the value of yourself, maybe this really explains why we're taught in school. You know, kids come out of school with very beat up self-esteems and stuff like that. Oh, you're only worth this or you're only worth that, right? But when you really know who you are, you got to ask yourself a question: how much is a natural person worth? If you paid yourself $7,000 for every one of these sold, is that too much? How much are we each worth? Well, if we're all equal, and here's what we get back to: if we're all equal, and some guy out there makes $1 million a day, does that not mean we all could at least make that? And when you understand as a society, we do value human life. Think about when somebody gets lost in the mountains or out in the sea or wherever it is, right? We don't question. We just send out. We spend hundreds of thousands looking for people. The value of a human life, when you understand who you are. See, if you mask yourself with all these titles, you don't see the value. You only see the market value of that title. But when you know who you really are and you put that into the equation, you'll never have profit. This actually cleared up because years in construction, I played the tax game for about 10 years. And I, like everybody else, was raised looking for profit. So I do my books and I do all the deductions and all this, and at the end of the time I had, a pile of money left on the thing. I'm going, okay, I know I'm supposed to make profit. How much of that is profit and how much of that is my wages? So once I figured it out, I went, had a bad year, no more profit. It's a really, now again, incorporated companies' whole existence is for making profit. Because they're not a human being, okay? Anything they make is above and beyond. Because they haven't put anything out like we as human beings put out. So that's really, it's funny because GST is so simple to unspin. Because we can just read it for what it is. It's actually very clear. It uses natural person in there, right? But it has probably caused more damage to this country and the people of this country in the short time it's been instituted here than income tax has. So as easy as to unspin, it's a lot more brutal aspect of it. But we're going to move into the Income Tax Act and really answer a question for you. Here's how you can work for the federal government without taking civil service exam. So if you hate tests and you still want to work and have a government, here's how you do it. You go and you sign up for their good old Canada pension plan. Let's look at what the words mean in this act and really start comparing them to what they mean when we normally use them. Employee includes an officer. Does it include anything else? No. Okay, if you can't accept the word includes and it says, let's remove all principles of interpretation. We go, the natural and ordinary meaning of employee is what? Anybody that works for anybody else plus an officer. Let's collapse everything. Okay, well ask yourself, why would they just remind us about officers? Why not firemen, teachers, businessmen? No, when we understand the restrictive use of it, whenever you see the word employee, it only means an officer, which is an artificially created entity. What's an employer? It means a person liable to pay salary or wages, remuneration for services performed in employment, and, which is what you're seeing as a compound sentence, so it's not this plus that, it's this is this and that, and in relation to the officer includes the person from whom the officer receives remuneration. So the employer first has to have a relationship to an officer before he's even deemed an employer under the Canada Pension Plan Act. Okay? What's employment? What's the normal meaning of the word employment? Just the act of being employed, going to work. It means but in here, it means the performance of services under an expressed or implied contract of service or apprenticeship, comma, and includes the tenure of an office. So who's the contract of service with? Good old federal government. That's how you get a nice contract of service job, making them your master, you're the slave, so you can hold this office as an officer. So that's the benefit plan that actually creates income tax. See, income tax in itself, you don't see it as a benefit, but it's connected to a benefit. It's actually a unique benefit plan when you look at that. So we've got to look at how are we related to that as a natural person. Can they force us to get one of these social insurance card or work in this office under a contract? If you go into the regulations, 3.1 of the regulations go, every individual who is required by the Act. See, the sentence structure itself just told you that what's an individual. It's not redefined, so it actually is a natural person. Every natural person is required by the Act. The sentence structure itself just told you that not all natural persons are required by the Act. So what would you be doing that would make you required by the Act? Well, maybe you were holding an office as an officer for remuneration under a contract of service. If you're doing that, then you're required by the Act to get a social, and you must have a social insurance number. So if you're going to receive that benefit, they need to track it, and therefore they can force the number upon you. And that's how come you see sometimes they'll come in and force a number on somebody who doesn't know who they are. Now, is it bad having the social insurance card with us? The social insurance card, I hope you see, is very neutral. It actually accesses many other federal government benefits. I look at it as a debit card into many of the systems, and each one of them are for different entities. Section 4 clears that up. It goes, every individual who expects to be an individual required. What they're saying here is that expect is a predicatory word. Okay, they're saying if you even expect that one day you may want to hold an office as an officer so you can get CPP, you may apply for one of the cards and carry it around with you, just so you have it. See, the card itself is very neutral. So just by having it is not a detrimental aspect. Just a little bit look at what the social insurance card really is. It means a social insurance number means a social insurance number assigned to a natural person under the authority of any act of Parliament And social insurance number card means the social insurance number card issued to the natural person under that authority. There are many acts. The other course goes into a lot of the different arenas that your social insurance card is for. And so it doesn't in and of itself represent a singular entity. It gives you access to represent an officer, an insured person, a student, a purchaser, many different ones. So when you look at the card, and that's why they brought it in before they connected to the Income Tax Act, because it was a variable card. And then 3 years after they brought it in, they connected it in 1967 to the Income Tax Act. So that brings us into the Income Tax Act now. And we're going to look at these words.